in this video we're going to learn a new set of morphs, and now we're going to start having some themes occasionally. So the theme for today, for instance, is number and size. So it's largely prefixes that have to do with number, and to a lesser extent we'll learn some things that have to do with amount and one or two math terms generally. So let's start with our prefixes, and I wanted to do this in numerical order. I thought that would be easiest. So we're going to go number by number, beginning with 1/2. Now, for a lot of these numbers, we're going to have two prefixes associated with it. One is going to be the Latin prefix, one is going to be the Greek. But sometimes they are so similar that they're identical because they both derive from the same Proto-Indo-European word and they haven't changed much. And sometimes we really only use one rather than the other. So for 1/2, our Latin, I'll put a little L here so we can keep track, prefix is semi, like semi-annual, and our Greek prefix, I'll put a little G here, is hemi, like hemisphere, half a sphere. We've actually already done words or prefixes for one. We learned uni and mono from Latin. And then for Greek, it's not really used that commonly. It's heno, but it doesn't show up that much in any English words, so we're not going to bother memorizing it. For 2, we learned the Latin prefix for 2 already. It's bi, like a bifurcation, or bisect, an angle. For Greek, it is du, du, because it comes from the Greek word duo. Now, I don't have this on the list, but it's something you definitely should be aware of. We have talked about, when we looked at ancient Greek itself, how we transliterate ancient Greek words into English. And by that we mean the Greek words have their own alphabet, and we have to switch from the Greek alphabet to the English alphabet. And usually it's pretty straightforward, but sometimes there is more than one possibility. And so that's true of this one-letter upsilon. Sometimes you get a du, sometimes you get a dy. And so we have do in words like duo and dual. We have dy in words like dyad. But that y sometimes gets spelled as an I. And so we have di in words like dioxide, meaning there's 2 oxygen in it. So you will see all 3 of these possibilities in English words, do, die, and d, and it's simply because the transliteration allows for multiple possibilities. Okay, so that's our 2. Little complicated. 3's simpler. For 3, our prefix is tri, T-R-I, like tricycle. And it is the same in Latin and Greek. The words are essentially identical across the 2 languages. 4, if we want to talk about 4, in Latin it's quadra, Q-U-A-D-R, like a quadrangle or quadrilateral, and in Greek it is tetra, right, T-E-T-R, like a tetrahedron, which is a solid shape that has 4 faces. Okay, so that's 1 through 4. Next up is 5. We're not going to talk about the one for 5. It's essentially like quink, but it doesn't show up really in English words except in some rare cases. So for 5, we just focus on our Greek prefix pent, which we see in words like pentagon and pentacle and pentagram and so forth. For 6, we have in Latin sex. Think of like sextuplets as when 6 babies are born the same pregnancy. And for Greek, hex, like a hexagon. For 7, we have Latin sept and Greek hept. For sept, think of a group of 7 as a septet. For hept, the term for a 7-sided shape in geometry is a heptagon. This one is much less common. To be frank, we don't use 7 as a prefix a lot in words, so sept and hept them are both not particularly common. I will point out something maybe you've noticed so far. We've had semi, hemi, sex, hex, sept, hept, and that is that there are sets of words in Latin and Greek where the Latin one starts with an S and the Greek one starts with an H. That's a common feature that we find across these 2 languages, and again, it's because these words come from the same Proto-Indo-European root, but in Latin, that root has changed so it starts with an S, and in Greek it changes so it starts with an H, but they're very similar otherwise. Okay, next up is 8. 8 is oct, and the words for 8 in Latin and Greek are so similar that they're essentially identical, and so the prefix is oct, like an octopus or an octagon. For 9, again, 9's not a commonly found prefix. I'm going to give you the Latin one, non, because we see it in a 9-sided shape like a nonagon. But in reality, you just don't see a lot of 9 used commonly as a prefix. And the Greek one is enea. It almost never shows up. Then we hit 10. And for 10, I'm going to put across both dec, D-E-C. Think of decagon or something like that. Again, they're so similar as to be essentially identical. So either language gives us dec as a prefix for 10. So that's 1 through 10. Now, obviously, there's prefixes that you could create for every other number, right? The Romans and the Greeks had all the numbers that we have, except 0. But we're not going to go through every possible number, obviously. I'm just going to add 100 and 1,000 because those are notable and frequently used. So for 100, the Latin is cent. Think of 1 cent, which is actually 1/100th of a dollar. Think of a century, which is 100 years. The Greek is hecaton, but it's so uncommon, we're not going to learn it. For 1,000, Latin prefix is mil. Think of a millipede or a millennium, right? 1,000 legs, or 1,000 feet, 1,000 years. And for Greek, it is kilo. Think of a kilogram, it's 1,000 grams, stuff like that. So those are our big numerical prefixes. But what we've covered here are the cardinal numbers. We also have prefixes for the ordinal numbers. And if you don't remember that distinction, ordinal numbers are numbers like first, second, third. They suggest the order in which something is happening. They can also be used for fractions, at least these roots can. You can use the same root to mean third in place to also mean 1/3 of something. So we're only going to do a few of these. So starting with first. In Latin, the prefix for first is prim. Think of prime, for instance, or words that start that have a similar beginning, primal, and so forth. Because it means first, it also can mean early, and that's the sense often of like primal or primitive as well. The Greek is proto for first, and again, you see it meaning first, but also very early. Think of like a protozoon, things like that. For second, I'm not going to give them to you because they're not, well, I'll say the Latin root that we get for second is second, so we're not going to bother to learn it because English just uses that commonly. Greek is deutero, and it does not show up very frequently in English, so we're not going to bother with second. For third, we'll learn the Latin root. It's terch, T-E-R-T, in words like tertiary. Right? And again, the Greek one is not common enough. We're not going to learn it. For four, it is quart. Think of a quart is a quarter, is 1/4 of a gallon, or a quartile, or things like that. They have the sense of fourth or 1/4 of something. Fifth is quint. Right? It's like quintile and similar words. And then, of course, there are terms for all these, 6th, 7th, 8th, and so forth, but they don't show up in English very frequently, with the exception, I would say, of 10th. 10th is decim, D-E-C-I-M, in words like decimal and so forth, right? Which decimals indicate tenths, right? Powers of 10. So that's the only ones we're going to cover here, right? So we have our first, prim or proto, and then second is really second, and then third is terch, fourth is quart, fifth is quint, and then we skip to 10, decim. Okay, so beyond that we have just a couple other morphs that I've thrown into this group here. First off, our prefix meaning all. We've learned the Latin prefix for all, it's omni, and now we're going to learn the Greek one. It's pan, and sometimes you see it as pant with a T, right? So if you've ever heard of words like Panhellenic or pandemonium, pantomime, right, if we want that T, these all come from the Greek for all, right? Pandemonium is all the demons, right? It comes actually from a book called Paradise Lost. And pantomime is entirely imitating, right? So it has this sense of all. Equal. We will learn the Latin prefix for equal. It's equi. It's pretty obvious. But the Greek one is iso. Right? So think about things that are isometric, right? They are equal measure, same size, same length, something like that. And then a word meaning great or large. In Latin, we use magni, like magnify, which literally means to make large, right? You can now see it because it's been made large. And in Greek, it's mega or megal. So sometimes it has that L in front of it. So mega and megal, things like a megawatt or megalomaniac, that one has the L in it, right? Someone who's obsessed with their own greatness is a megalomaniac. Two roots then, as well, just roots that we see in mathematical terms and then sometimes elsewhere as well. First up, gon. Gon is a Greek root that means angle. So anytime you hear pentagon, hexagon, heptagon, octagon, right, it means that many angles, 5 angles, 6 angles, and so forth. Later is side, right? And this is related to the lot of the Latin verb fare, lot, to bear or carry. And so there's a sort of a semantic association between carrying and side that the Romans have. So this word is derived from that. This is actually the combining form. The base form is latus, but that just doesn't show up in English words. So this is the combining form of the Latin word for side. And so quadrilateral is 4-sided, or bilateral literally is pertaining to 2 sides. Okay, so it shows up in those kinds of contexts. Okay, and then the last thing that I have here are a couple new suffixes. Like I said before, I think there's not so many suffixes that we need to learn in this course, so we're kind of just doing a couple at a time now. For today, I have first up isle, I-L-E. Isle is used to mean able or capable of in some contexts, in which case it creates an adjective, but it's also used sometimes in referring to a number, right, in which case it's a noun. So think of percentile, or if you've ever heard terms like quartile, the 4th part, then that's where it's used as a noun. Okay, so it can do double duty like a lot of the ones we've learned. And then I want to do a related set. NCE, NCY, and NT. These all come from Latin. And they, in fact, come from Latin participles. So if you're not familiar with what a participle is, it's a form of the verb that indicates the action going on and can modify another word. So it's frequently the form of the verb ending in ing, like going, running, doing, eating, right? That's the participle. And we tend to use it to either modify a word like the man going to the store, or going, it tells us something about man. Or we can also use it as a kind of a noun as well, although there it has a different term in grammar, right? Like going to the store made me tired, right? Their going is sort of the subject of that sentence. So these endings, NCE, NCY, and NT, derive from that sort of participle, that verb form in Latin. That these are the endings that those participles have. So NCE is used to mean a quality or state. And so that is a noun. So think of a word like resistance, relevance, persistence. All right, these all indicate a quality or state. NCY, same thing. Indicates a quality or state, and it is a noun. So what did I say? Relevancy, right? Those kinds of words, then with NCY. And then we have NT. And NT can actually do double duty. It can just have this adjectival sense of pertaining to, right? Or it can be one who. It can also indicate someone who is doing some action, in which case it's a noun. And so we have a word like relevant, right? Relevant is an adjective, it means pertaining to. But a tenant is one who is literally like holding onto something, possessing something. And so that one is a noun. So it can do double duty as well. And before I finish, I just want to have one note about Y as a suffix ending. So Y is a very common suffix ending in English words. And it shows up in various places because it's used to render a lot of other suffixes. So you will see Y at the ends of words, including adjectives, nouns, sometimes by itself, sometimes at the end of other suffixes, right? It's been added to the end of other suffixes, which is really what NCY is. It's NCE plus the Y ending. And the reason it's so common is because it really corresponds to a couple different endings. It corresponds to the Greek ending IA in words like the Greek theologia. In Latin, in English, we just turn that IA into a Y and made it theology. So it becomes the ending of a lot of Greek words in that way. It corresponds to the Latin ending ATUS, which feels like more of a stretch, but apparently when these Latin words got taken into French changed that ending just to an E, and then from there it's an easy hop to a Y. So, for instance, the Latin word contrata became contre, which becomes our word country. And there's even an English ending, a native English suffix ig, which gets rendered in modern English spelling as a Y. So the Y comes through into English in a lot of ways. So when you see a Y, it tends to just be an ending that we put on that can stand for either this IA ending from Greek, which is a noun ending, this atus Latin ending, which again is largely a noun ending, or sometimes it's this ig ending, which is actually an adjectival ending in English. And so Y can mean a lot of things. It's a difficult one to pin down, and it's very common. So yeah, when you see a Y, you can be aware that could be a noun, it could be an adjective, right? There's just a lot of possibilities there. Okay, so that's it for our list for today. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.